In a world overrun with the fake, delusional, and disingenuous, he stands as a beacon of truth. He is Abuki Cabal. You are listening to Abuki Cabal.
Welcome to the Abuki Cabal Show.
What's going on, everybody? Glad everybody liked the last show. Got a huge amount of support on that show and views. I appreciate that very much. If you guys could please hit the like button, share, and subscribe. If we could get the likes consistent with the amount of views, I would appreciate it. You guys could help a brother out with that. I would appreciate it very much. I also appreciate all of the feedback that I got in the comments section. It was interesting, to say the least. And this time, I think I'm going to cover a couple of articles that I found regarding singlehood and how women feel about being characterized as single, the pressure that they feel regarding being married, and I'm going to explore that a little bit today. So let's take a look at that. First, we'll take a look at the intro page there. Single women are losing in today's economy. Life is more expensive when you're single, especially if you're a woman. All right. Let's take a look at that and see what we can peel out of this article. All right. This is by The Insider. And Hillary Hoffauer. And like I said, single women are losing in today's economy, according to Ms. Hoffauer. Analysis. Sometimes it feels as if everyone is pushing women to get married, even the U.S. government. While more millennials are postponing or foregoing marriage, the economy hasn't caught up. Single people pay more for housing, social life, and taxes, and they get paid less. Kate Manley, a 29-year-old teacher living in Boston, wants to move into a one-bedroom apartment, but prices are nearly the same as the rent. She now splits on a two-bedroom unit with her sister. I do not feel like the renting industry really caters towards couples. I do feel like the renting industry really caters towards couples and those who share one room and can split the rent, she told Insider. What does that mean for the rest of us that are not in a relationship or not splitting one bedroom with a partner? Manley is experiencing an effect of the single tax in which singles are penalized in an economy shaped by a post-World War II values of marriage and family. Since then, times have changed. Millennials are postponing home buying, marriage, and childbearing until later or never. An Institute for Family Studies analysis of the U.S. Census data found that a record 35% of U.S. adults aged 25 to 50 had never married as of 2018. In 1970, that share sat at 9%. It's a sign of both distress and progress, as millennials created a new version of the American dream. The single life has become more socially acceptable and preferable for many, but while stigmas have shifted, the economy system that incentivizes marriage hasn't. The cost of being single show up in everything from social life to the tax code, housing, and health insurance. Kind of get the feeling that they want to push towards a more embracing economy that will allow people to just be single and just do whatever they want to do. Seems like more and more today we're starting to see more and more movement away from the family structure. But without the family structure, how are we gonna have kids and make decent people from these children? We're just not it seems like we're moving more towards almost a pagan type lifestyle where you just go out here and just embrace the streets. But let's move along. While costs are higher for singles, they also tend to earn less on average than their partnered counterparts. Plus, women who already earn less than men on average are even further behind if they are Black or Hispanic. That disparity becomes even more problematic as millennials weather yet another economic woe, 40-year high inflation rates. Claudia Golden, professor of economics at Harvard University, said that research highlights marriage as a clear cause of higher earnings for men, she said. But for women, she said, there is little about a positive causal effect of marriage or partnering. One is the costliest number. Okay. The U.S. government defines single as people who aren't married, meaning you can legally be single and still have a partner. Most commonly, it refers to those who aren't married, living with a partner, or in a committed relationship. Excuse me. That's how the Pew Research Center defines single, which describes 31% of Americans in its 2020 report on America's singletons. Many single people seek solo living, but as Manly's case suggests, that's hard to do in many U.S. cities where the median rent on a one-bedroom apartment is nearly the same price as a two-bedroom. The declining affordability due to today's housing crisis could undo progress women have made towards home ownership. This might sound so depressing, but I truly cannot wrap my head around when I'll ever be able to buy a home, Manley said, of living in Boston. It just feels unattainable right now. In some ways, I'm resigned to the possibility that I may have to rent forever if I choose to live here. About 65% of single women reported that they would rather not wait until they were married to buy homes. According to data from the Bank of America released last month, so far, 1 in 3 have bought. But Kathy Cummings, Senior Vice President of Homeownership Solutions at Bank of America, told Insider, many single women don't feel financially ready to buy a home on their own, even if they're emotionally ready. Megan Rousey, a 27-year-old single mother, took the leap in 2019, but told Insider she didn't think she'd be able to do the same in today's economy. I don't think I could buy a home in today's market, as I was only able to afford a fixer-upper, she said, adding that the renovations she's been making haven't been cheap or easy. Prices on homes and materials have gone up like crazy, and I wouldn't have been able to make it livable even if I did get the house. No one to split the bill with. So I'm gonna stop here for a second. This is tying into a lot of things that the manosphere has been talking about how hard it is, for single black females, single females in general, to live the lifestyle that they want. This living your best life thing that they advertise, that you see on all the social media, it's harder to obtain than a lot of people, I think, give thought to. And you have a lot of people out here with, this fallacy about how they're going to get out and, get a house and, do everything on their own. You got to have them, if they're going to date anybody, they've got to be making over 100,000 and whatnot, and it's clearly indicated in these statistics that these women aren't doing as well as, they are expecting of the men that they would date or marry. I mean, and it's showing in their ability to take care of themselves when they're single, and they still don't want to get married. This really ought to be an eye opener for some of the folks. And if you're watching Kevin Samuels and you listen to some of these ladies out here talking about, what they expect from a partner and how good they have it and how, prosperous they are, and, they have their PhDs and whatnot. But apparently all of that is for naught, because, they can't afford to live in a decent place in some of these bigger cities where you can make a pretty decent living, married or single. So let's move on. No one to split the bill with. And this getting into, why you should be able to get with a, up and coming guy, who may be a blue collar guy, and you guys build something together, So maybe some people might need to start looking at life a little bit more realistically. All right. In her book, Spinster, Making a Life of One's Own, the author and journalist Kate Bullock explores the appeal of choosing a single life for millions of American women. Studies show that a woman who lives alone is more likely to have an active social life and maintain family bonds, she wrote. Not because she has extra time on her hands, but because these are the bonds that sustain her. Okay, we just talked about this. How single women make it, in today's economy is that they get help. They get help from their parents. They get help from family members and whatnot, and they get help from the government. There's all kinds of programs to help single women make it, get their education. All kinds of things are out there and available for them. Those same things are not out here available for men, to get a start and to get going. Those things are not available. So when you find a man who has, has his stuff together, his money is good enough for him to get into a relationship or get married, it's because he dug for it. He embraced the digger lifestyle, because we're diggers, we dig for it. And then once we've dug out a living, then we try to, bring in, get a wife, get into a relationship where that is decent. Okay. But you see that, feminism has taught these women to embrace singlehood and to, be single at record levels, more than there ever has been before. And now they're about to rearrange the economy so that they can sustain themselves, or they're proposing that they rearrange the economy so that single people can, have it better. And you can bet that this is not so single men can have it better, so single women can have it better, so they can not be bothered. All right. So by maintaining this bigger social network, can be expensive when you're doing it by yourself. It means fewer dinners at home alone, more drinks out with coworkers or dinner out with friends. Or one of the things that we complain about a lot is, single women having dinners with multiple guys, dangling the possibility of sex, or the possibility of a relationship out to about 4 or 5 men, and she can eat all week long. But they don't want us to talk about that. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just a woman just, doing what she does, and no one should be able to tell her anything, So she can be of the streets and still be respectable, unlike in the the good old days or the bad old days, however you want to look at it. But there used to be standards where you just didn't do things like that, But I digress. All right. Drinks out with coworkers or dinners with friends. There are Uber rides home and Hinge dates. It can all put a dent in a bank account. Okay, so that's part of that living your best life, going out and kicking it, living your life to the fullest, eating out all the time, not eating in, not saving money, using it, blowing it as you make it. All right. So too can shelling out on gifts and travel. Yeah. Everybody's talking about how they're well traveled. Oh, I'm well traveled. I want a man who's well traveled, and he's got ambition, and all of that. See, more and more you read into this article, and it sounds of a person who has unrealistic goals and can't be still. This is just bouncing around based on your emotions and not on a logical path to your future. Things we talk about all the time, but we're vilified for. So too can shelling out on gifts and travel to visit all these loved ones. Some travel businesses like hotels, cruise lines charge solo travelers a single supplement. When only one person is using the services, it doesn't help that these activities are all more expensive now thanks to inflation. Alrighty, this isn't to say that partner people don't have their own social lives to pay for, but couples can split the cost. Plus, many gym memberships, cell phone plans, and meal delivery services offer deals for family plans. Okay? Uncle Sam wants you to get married. Deals for couples and families are a ripple effect of a single tax endorsed by a government that favors the married. The tax code, for example, used to call for Americans to file income taxes individually in 1948, around the birth of the post-war version of the American dream. Joint filing was implemented to let married couples combine their incomes for tax purposes. While couples that earned about the same income see little to no benefit from filing jointly, couples in which one partner earns all of them or most of the income benefit from a marriage bonus, in which the higher earners bracket can drop after marriage. Married couples also enjoy more tax breaks than single filers, such as a larger standard deduction. Insider calculated the taxes for an American who earned $50,000 for the 2021 tax year using the Tax Policy Center's marriage calculator. With no itemized deductions, they would owe $4,314. If they married a partner who didn't work, earning no income together, they would owe $2,629 in taxes because $50,000 falls into a lower tax bracket when married. Healthcare, Social Security, and retirement accounts all follow suit. For some married couples, it can be cheaper to add a spouse onto their employer-sponsored health insurance than to have a separate policy. Spouses can also receive up to 50% off their other half's Social Security benefit, depending on their earnings. IRA and Roth IRA income limits are also higher for married couples with one income. That's not to mention the challenges women already face on these fronts, who have less money saved for retirement and spend about $15,000 more on health care than men during retirement, according to a 2019 Fidelity analysis. One upside: women tend to live longer than men. Actually, that's a financial downside as well. Whitney Pesk, director of child care policy at the National Women's Law Center, previously told Insider, while women end up with less retirement income than men, they also tend to usually need more retirement savings because women tend to live longer than men, she said. Women are more likely to be single later in life and have higher health costs than men as they age. Until America's singletons get a stronger support system, single women will continue to face an uphill battle in affording the things they want. For a long time, and even still, if I'm being honest, I would think of all the things I could do with dual income, said Rousey, the single mom and homeowner. At some point, though, I realized I was wasting time on an idea I was not guaranteed. What do you guys think about that? There were a lot of gems in this article. You know, all this "I don't need a man" rhetoric that's being, splashed all over the place, and that, black women have been sold is not really adding up. When you look at the numbers, especially according to this article. So, if you dig around and if you do your research, you'll see that there are many holes in the dream that's been sold to women for the sake of the progress of white feminism. I mean, it is what it is. There is cognitive dissonance about, the facts surrounding why a lot of women believe what they believe nowadays. But, the data is what it is. You don't have to accept it, but do so at your own peril. So there's a second article with a little bit different spin on here that I'm going to cover here. And this one is called "The Price of Being Single." Okay. And this one was done in 2015 by Jessica Gross. Okay. So let's dig into this one and see what she thinks. All right, here. One researcher's quest to end discrimination against single people. That's that victimhood thing there. Discrimination against single people. Okay. All right. Bella DePaulo, now in her 60s, has always been single. For some time, she thought the Mary bug would bite her until she realized it wouldn't. And she didn't want it to. DePaulo, who describes herself as a single at heart, relishes the lifestyle. What she doesn't love is the prejudice that single people face, from the cultural stigma to discrimination at work, in the media, and elsewhere. That's why the Harvard-trained social scientist, that's why she's single, now a project scientist at UCSB, has spent nearly 2 decades researching single life in America, publishing her findings in scholarly journals, in books, including Singled Out, and on blogs. And there are links in the article. I will put that in the description. She explains why the pervasive negative stereotypes about single people are largely unsustainable. While the anecdotal prejudice is real and so ingrained we often hardly see it, first let's define our terms, singleism and matrimania. DePaulo has coined 2 terms that are essential to this discussion. Singleism is the stereotyping, stigmatizing, and discrimination of people who are not married, she says. The flip side of that is matrimania, the over-the-top celebrating and hyping of marriage and coupling and weddings. So if you're single, you get it coming and going. Married men earn about 26% more than single men at equivalent levels. Single people face discrimination in the workplace. DiPaolo posits that single people non-work lives are often cast as less valid and valuable than married people's. As a result, they're often expected to cover while those with spouses or families leave the office early. Take the leftover vacation slots or travel more on the assumption they have no need to be at home. For U.S. singles, there are also more concrete effects like insurance benefits, Social Security benefits, and pay. Married men earn about 26% more than single men, and she has a link here in the article, at equivalent levels, and are generally held in lower esteem than their married counterparts. DiPaolo and her colleagues created a biographical sketch of people who were identical, except that half were single while the other half were married. Participants judged the hypothetical singles to be less socially mature, less well-adjusted, and more self-centered than the otherwise identical married counterparts. The effect was starker for hypothetical 40-year-olds who by cultural standards are at a should-be married age, but persisted for the hypothetical 25-year-old too. Yet there are 107 million unmarried people over the age of 18 in the United States. Single people are near half the population, and one of my favorite statistics, Americans spend more years of their adult lives not married than married, DiPaolo says. That means that the moralizing of marriage as an institution and the accompanying degradation of single life not only affects a huge proportion of the American population, but is out of touch with the country's cultural reality. We often recognize singleism as prejudice as part of a series of housing studies DiPaolo and her colleagues described to participants a landlord with two people interested in the available property. In each example, a person from a discriminated against group offered to pay more than a person from a recognized majority, but the landlord chose the latter, a man over a woman who afforded to pay more, a white person over a black person, a married couple over a single person. In each case, participants explained the landlord's choice as discrimination, except in the last case. Then they said, because the couple is married, like that in itself is an explanation, DiPaolo says. They didn't get to what was obvious in all the other instances, that it's discrimination. That's probably because they just don't see it as discrimination. Obviously, there's probably going to be a bigger need for a family, and we make provisions as our society for families. And that's because children are involved. Children are going to be looked out for in a situation like that before single people. Single people don't have as much burden on them, which I don't think that she's taken into consideration here. Okay. She says, if the benefits of marriage were perfectly obvious to people, we wouldn't need all this hype around it. So I guess what she's saying with that is that, we wouldn't have to push it if marriage was so great. I tend to agree with her on that. We do push it quite a bit, and everybody does, make it seem like, married life is going to be so much better. And, married life is hard too, but Let's move along. Singleism and matrimania are the result of cultural insecurities. Perhaps counterintuitively, DePaulo thinks that the prejudice against single people and the hysteria about marriage are an outgrowth of our insecurities. If the benefits of marriage were so perfectly obvious to people, we wouldn't need all this hype around it, she says. The benefits marriage used to confer, I think she's trying to say used to confer, can now be attained in other ways. A single woman can have kids, sleep with partners without anyone batting an eye, and support themselves. So there you got it. She can do that, but is that the best thing for her? For her to, be single and go out here and sleep with multiple partners and whatnot. It seems like that's what she's advocating. And for some, hey, that might be cool. That might be acceptable, especially in this day and time where anything goes. But that's not what we uphold culturally, So this is a cry to change things so that, being of the streets is okay. So here you see in 2015 where, the push for a lot of the cultural upheaval that we're seeing right now with all of this, identity politics and all of this raging feminism and whatnot is just all over everything, just outrageous liberalism. All of it's showing in this article right here. And it's a lot of, well, this is the way the world is, but it shouldn't be. That's the argument that you get from feminists, from people who want to remain single, and want to essentially piss on the world, that doesn't support them going out and living their best life. That's what it is. The world is like this, but it shouldn't be, Well, we have to live in the world that we're in and not in the make-believe world that you think it should be. That's just a part of growing up, folks. So let's move along here. All right. Let's get back to it. All right. Okay. All right. Insecurities. Okay. Single woman can have kids and sleep with partners without anyone batting an eye and support themselves. Okay. I don't know about people batting their eye, because a lot of people do bat their eye, that we shouldn't be encouraging people to just go out here and just, do all of that, especially women, and this is one of the things that we're talking about. We got to have standards. There are standards. Everybody's trying to invoke a society where there are no standards. There's everybody can just do whatever they want, and that's going to have cost. Just like they didn't think about the cost of going out here and, pushing for women to be in the workforce and working and, spending all this time so that they can't have a meaningful relationship or lives where they can, help their kids or be with their kids and spend time with their families. They didn't think about the consequences of all of this, but now we're seeing the consequences of this. You see on these shows where they ask these women, if you could stay home or work, which would you want to do? And all of them say they want to stay home. So that looks like a glowing failure, for feminism and all of this. Women want to work and go out and have their own stuff. That's not what women are saying. Okay, let's move on. Okay, to say marriage is a good choice for those who genuinely want it is one thing, but to believe that married people are unilaterally better off than single people is, DePaulo suggests, to betray a deeper ambivalence about what makes marriage a worthwhile decision. Okay. All right. So now she's saying that, marriage is not better and, by that last statement. But we already know that statistically marriage is better for raising children. Children do better in two-parent households. Across the board, the statistics are in married people's favor with that. But she doesn't like those, and she's saying, we should not even consider those, which, I think is disingenuous. Okay, let's move on. Okay, the meme that married people are happier and healthier than single people is unfounded. DePaulo dug into the research and supposedly proving the benefits of getting married and found substantial experimental flaws across the board. Often, these studies either excluded divorced people entirely or lumped them in with single people, thereby obscuring the fact that they had gotten married and hadn't liked it. Okay, just because you got a divorce doesn't mean that you didn't like it. It means that something went wrong in it. Anything could have happened. But that probably would be a whole nother study in itself. Well, let's move on. Seems like she's reaching a little bit there for me. But you guys tell me what you think. All right, another problem. Unlike with drug studies, a study of marriage can never truly isolate that variable. You can't randomly assign people to get married or not. The least problematic research, in DePaulo's estimation, which follows the same people over the long term, has found that around the time of their weddings, people show a brief increase in happiness, then go right back to where they were when they were single. If they get a divorce or get divorced later, they don't even show this brief honeymoon effect. Stigma against single parents is easily debunked too. What's really bad for kids is not having a single parent, but conflict, acrimony, or cold, neglectful environments. Okay. This is psychobabble. Okay. She's trying to debunk, the fact that, look, all these things are bad if they are present in the environment with the kids. But by and large, she can't just say that every marriage is going to, have this, or a large number of marriages are going to have this. You just can't throw stuff in there and see if it sticks. Did you see any evidence that this was largely a problem in the research? No, you didn't. But you're going to throw that out there and say that, hey, all these things are bad too. Or if these things are bad, are found in a relationship, then this makes the marriage bad as well. So, this is, again, disingenuous. All right. In the bottom, it says the bottom line is that there's no better or worse and no shortcut to happiness. Those who are happiest follow their desires, whether that means getting married or staying single for DePaulo. As for many others, staying single just feels right. If I got married, I would not become happier or healthier, she says. I love living single, except for all the singleism and matrimania. Okay. This sounds like sour grapes. She is 60 something years old, in the article here. Let's see where it says, now in her 60s. All right. It says in the beginning of the article. So she's in the twilight of her life. It's all over for her. Ain't nobody looking for a 60-year-old woman. So, her, before she knew it, after getting all of her degrees and whatnot, which says that she's this she's a Harvard trained, social scientist. So, which means this is just more affirmation of the fact that, of what Kevin says on his show, which is, you go out and you go get all those degrees. And, once you get those degrees, instead of looking for a man, you focused on all that education that you're getting. And then by the time, you hit your 30s and whatnot, you start, you start having fun. You're used to, doing things on your own. You've run through quite a few men and whatnot, and then, nobody's trying to hang on to you. So then you look around the corner and your 50s have hit, and now you're in your 60s, and now you want to write a bunch of books about how it doesn't matter that you never got married. It just sounds like sour grapes. And it's just a whole lot of disingenuousness. We're looking at a whole bunch of trying to make it right, because truly what she feels is she feels like she missed that bus. And I'm gonna write this article to say that, hey, it's okay if you miss the bus. So what she's doing is rather than telling people to go ahead and take advantage of their younger years, what she's saying is that basically it doesn't matter. Look at me, I'm in my 60s, and hey, I've got my degrees, and I'm writing these articles, and everything's good. But look, you look at the article that was after that, and we're seeing some of the same. We're seeing the issues are worse from 2015 when she was talking about it. Now you have individuals who can't even pay to pay for a place to live, lodging. How are you going to live your best life and go on all these trips to Cancun and to the beach and whatnot, and go on all these girls trips? How are you going to do that if you can't find a place to live? I was on Facebook and I saw where they were showing a house. It was like 200,000, a little above that, and looked like 20, 30 people came to see the same house because there's a housing shortage in this city. I want to say it was North Carolina, somewhere like that. Here down south, you got people who are moving from California, coming out here. They're increasing the rental prices. They moved to Texas and all these other places. They're buying rental properties and building rental properties in Arkansas and Oklahoma and other surrounding states, and they're jacking up the prices because they see that they can get rich off of it, because they've been used to the high real estate prices in California. And then when California situation became untenable, they moved out. Homeless rates in California is just ridiculous. People are out on the street because they're working and they're homeless. Then they come down here and they raise the price of rent down here, and people are not making huge amounts of money down here. That's why this argument about, men making over 100,000 and whatnot is so crazy, to a lot of people down here, because a lot of people don't make over 100,000. People say in New York, 100,000 ain't nothing. You can be a street sweeper and make over 100,000 in New York, apparently. But in these other places down here where, you don't get paid that much and you can live off of a lot less, that's not even realistic. But, it's getting to the point where the rent's getting high down here too. So if you aren't in a relationship where you can split the costs and you guys build together, don't each of you not working yourselves to death, but you're working, and building your home, building your infrastructure up. You have your honeycomb hideout with which you can jump out and extend yourself out to build from. You can't fight crime without a bat cave. You know what I'm saying? So that's what you need to focus on. You get your house, you then from there, you build from outward. You live in a responsible way. You don't live above your means. You tackle problems in a realistic fashion. But now you got a lot of people that are growing up and they can't even solve realistic problems because social media has jacked up people's thought processes. A lot of people are out here. They talk about, men not being leaders, but when a man gets out and he takes a leadership role, what's the first thing they say? Oh, you can't tell me what to do. What makes you think you're good enough to be a leader? It's constant questioning. And now we live in a society where, the main objective is to instill doubt, needless scenarios, so that you paralyze a person. They can't make a decision because you put so much extraneous information into the mix that they can't even get outside of that loop. So when people are trying to sell you on a bunch of mess, learn how to break down that problem and see it from your perspective and not from a rich person's perspective or a person who is making a fictitious amount of money's perspective, because they're not going to have to deal with it. The person that's in the real situation and who's making real money and who's having to deal with trying to make real money the best way they can, they're the people that are going to have to deal with that situation and solve their problem. So that being said, it's been fun, y'all. I appreciate you guys coming out. Hopefully you like the show. Hopefully you got a little something out of these articles. I think it's a little telling. One from 2015, one from 2020. I think it was 2021 maybe. But two different perspectives on being single. One sour grapes, one just looking at it from a realistic perspective. Both calling for change in the way we view singlehood. Today, look, men are doing, especially black men are doing great being single. We're also doing great being married. So on the other end, it's not looking the same. So weigh it as you will. But one side's looking at it responsibly and trying to be logical about it. The other side is trying to basically live for a bunch of people that don't give a damn about them. So if you want to put on airs and fictitious lifestyles so that you can compete with other women, hey, that's on you. If you want to build something and have a meaningful life, and have standards, then there's the other side of the equation. But please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And I'm out. Oh, please, as you view, please hit the like button. Or if you don't like it, hit the dislike button. But, either or. But, if you're going to have, a large amount of views, can you guys please at least hit the like button? I appreciate you guys. Thank you and good night.
I feel like a motherless child alone.